Oh, welcome back. Day two of sub work. What we're starting out today is we're going to place ourselves on this Cartesian graph here of energy and pleasantness. If you feel that you've got low energy, you go all the way over there. And if you feel you got very low pleasantness, you go all the way down there. Or maybe you've got high energy, then you might go all the way up there. And maybe you've got high pleasantness, then you go all the way up there. See how that works? All right. Now, before you take the time to place yourself on this graph, it would be good to take a moment to go over how these slides work. So there's a reminder on slide 51 in case any of you have trouble reading the board where this video is playing from. Note to students, assistants, substitutes, and or teachers covering this class today. Music indicates that the video should be paused so that students may complete their work on their Chromebook or paper. Unless specified, these pauses needn't be longer than 3 minutes, though I'll often try and be more exact for you. Now, this piece of music that we're listening to while we're going over this, here's a little description from New York Public Radio classical station describing Grieg's A minor 16 part 2. And when you see orange words, class, you know that you say the word, not Mr. Surface. The adagio is where Grieg's talents are really on melancholy and longing without being stayed. The of the second movement, again, the lower strings playing in their upper registers. Aching, yearning, the doesn't return until full 2 minutes in. And when it does, it's hesitant, as if trying out a few before sticking to just one. There's a bit of between the orchestra and the soloist, but it's slow and easy, like having a long while sitting stretched out on a patch of grass. No doubt, there are sparks of and surprise, but I'm in awe of how this portion of the concerto is. So your job, students, is to locate where on this graph you are mood-wise today. And for those of you who don't have a working computer today, for whatever reason, you simply just make a little graph yourself and then put where you would go on the graph as well, right? So take the moment to do this now, please. Excellent. For my part, I think I would probably put it, well, I'm very unpleasant because I'm not in school today, but my energy is starting to come back. So I'd probably be, uh, maybe here. Maybe here. All right. Now, what emotion best describes what you are feeling and what might be causing you to feel this way? Well, if I got paper, I simply just put a number 1 and a number 2. But otherwise, I'm on the computer for slide 48 and I'm typing, the emotion. Well, let me put actually, this would be better. Blank is the emotion that best describes what I am feeling, period. And then what might be causing you to feel this way? I would put a long blank. Might be causing me to feel this way. Obviously, you can use those same sentence starters if you don't have your computer today. You can just use them right there for 1 and 2. But please take the time to take care of slide 48 now. Oh, yes, indeed. Now, for those of you who do not have a computer, you are going to be rocking and rolling with a word search. For those of you that do have your computer, you're going to go onto Lexia for 20 minutes. which means you can just click this thing that'll take you to a class link. Yours will look a little bit different than mine because I'm a teacher and you're a student, presumably. So you just type in Power Up, or you can type in Lexia, and it'll take you to what you need. All right. We're going to take about those 20 minutes now. Those of you that computers are working on the word search, please take 20 minutes now to get Lexia in. All right. So remember, the music that you hear means that the students will be working usually no more than 3 minutes. Where we left off in the book, We Are Still Here. We were sort of in the middle of presentations, and now we're going to start today with Katie's presentation on relocation. Okay. So the federal government wanted us to leave our tribal lands and live and act more like white people. So Congress passed a law that pushed aside the fact that indigenous people are separate under the law, with rights as citizens of our native nations and of the United States. They encouraged us to move to cities far from our tribal homes, promised jobs and schooling to those who moved, and led to populations of poor native people with little support in cities and suburbs. Even with our people scattered throughout the country, native nations say we are still here. Thinking about this last slide, we're going to answer a little something. We've got 1, 2, and 3 different questions. So you can put 1, number 2, and number 3. And let's turn these questions into sentence starters. What do you notice about the location of the people on this page? I notice that the location of the people on this page are. You can use a different sentence starter if you'd like. Was relocation fair? Relocation was not fair because, and obviously you're not going to use both was and was not. You're going to take the time to choose one of those and explain why. The number 3, how do you think this affected communities of native people? This affected communities of native people because, right? And if you wanted to, you could also say positively or negatively if you wanted to choose between those two. All right, those of you who don't have a computer today, you're just writing the answer to those 3 questions, right? You simply just 1, 2, and 3 those. All right, so everybody please take the time to answer those 3 questions now for relocation. Nice job, Grieg. This is Jesse's presentation on tribal activism. Native citizens continued to speak up, organize, and increase our longstanding commitment to strengthen tribal sovereignty, the right to have your own power, to make your own land and rules, to speak out about termination and relocation, to recover our lands and harvest traditional foods, to draw attention to Native people's lack of sufficient health care, and to help students go to college, including on tribal lands. With our collective voice and presence, Native nations say, we are still here. Self-determination brought to you by Phil. Native nations needed more control of our own lives, so we pushed back on federal rules that oversaw nearly every part of life on our lands. To support tribal sovereignty, the United States passed laws that recognized that our governments could handle our own affairs, helped Native nations offer programs and services directly to our citizens, restored many terminated tribes to federally recognized status, and allowed some tribes to recover lands lost during allotment and termination. While pressuring Congress to carry out these laws, our Native nations repeatedly say, we are still here. This is DJ's presentation on Indian child welfare and education. Native nations care about the welfare and education of our children. We needed to stop officials in various states from removing thousands of our children from their families and placing them in non-native homes. Native nations prompted Congress to approve laws that block state officials from taking our children without notifying our tribe, focused on Native children staying with family or other tribal citizens, and addressed the specific education needs of Native children in our communities. To protect and provide for our future generations, Native nations say, we are still here. Now, a reminder, when you're breaking some of the text down to write about in a TDA later, or at least to read an exemplar, which is what we're doing, we're going to break it down the following 3 ways. The red dots should be placed on the prompt. So you look at the prompt, you find the 2 most important words, and you put your 2 red dots there. The purple dots should be placed on the text. So where you see words and writing on the page, that's where you'll put your purple dots. And the orange dot should be placed on a visual. That's where you find some sort of visual information or data or illustrations. So let's do this page together. Prompt. There are many dimensions to the resilience or toughness of Native Americans in this country. Which student does the best job presenting this information? Write an essay examining their presentation. Well, I certainly see that the word student seems to play a large role. And I see that the word resilience or toughness, I'm going to go with toughness on this one, seems to work well for 2 important words from that prompt. Now with these purple dots, I need to find 2 parts of the text that help support that. Well, certainly the phrase, we are still here. So I'm going to put that purple dot right down there. But now I'm going to look at the information itself. And it says, we needed to stop all Native nations care about the welfare and education of our children. I'm going to put that on the word "are," right? Saying that their needs might be a little bit different than someone else who maybe doesn't come from a Native culture. Now, I got my last little orange here, and I'll be honest, I have a little trouble finding it. Oops, there on a blanket. So I need to find some data, some visual data that helps to go with this prompt over here. And honestly, I think I'm going to go with this this meal, this little beach or lake picnic going on there. And I'm going to put it right on that kid there as the visual information to help support that prompt. Now, let's say for some reason you've got no computer today, right? Well, then you can just make sure that you write down 1 or 2 the 2 words that are important from the prompt, right? And then in the purple, you can write 1 or 2 words that popped out from the text on the page, and then just a number 1 here for the image that we put our orange dot on. So for those of you with paper, maybe you need to look at your classmates' slides 59, but please take the time to make sure if you're using paper, you're caught up soon. All right. Religious freedom, slide 61. Native people challenged federal and local laws and policies that had banned us from freely practicing our traditional religions. Native nations sought help from the U.S. Supreme Court so that we could practice our beliefs and ceremonies, tribes could access sacred sites outside our lands, and tribal citizens could keep and use sacred objects. When the court did not support us, Native nations sought support from Congress to say, we are still here. On this particular slide, what do you notice about the Supreme Court judges? Right? So number 1, and as we go along here, remember that if you're on paper, right, you're certainly just put a number 1, put a number 1 right there, right? So number 1, what do you notice about the Supreme Court judges? I notice that the Supreme Court judges are, second question, Are or were any of the judges native? So you'll be saying yes/no. Number 3, Native nations were not allowed to practice their religions or speak their languages. How do you think that affected Native people? The inability to speak or practice their own language probably had a blank effect on the Native people because. Please take the time to finish this slide and or write on paper to address those questions, those 3. All right. This is Ilya's presentation on economic development. Tribal leaders noticed our people failing financially while others in the United States succeeded. Some Native nations opened casinos as a way to make money on our lands where few opportunities existed. This type of business allows those tribes to vary how people earn a living and care for themselves, use profits to develop businesses and employment, pay for important services like police, fire stations, and health care, to offer scholarships and after-school programs as well as operate tribally run schools. Even though the federal government regulates tribal casinos, Native nations say, we are still here. Language revival. This is Chugle's presentation. Native nations want to increase the number of tribal language speakers. This is necessary to pass on values, stories, and ceremonies to future generations. Seeking to preserve our cultures, Native nations urged Congress to approve laws to encourage teaching Native languages in schools, allow our Native speakers to teach in classrooms, give financial grants to tribes and schools for language programs. Speaking Indigenous languages strengthens our heritage, so each Native nation says, in our own language, we are still here. Sovereign. This is Chance's presentation on sovereign resurgence. Having survived disease, war, and federal rules meant to destroy us and our way of life, Native Americans continue to exercise our sovereignty. Together we take action to speak up for the land, water, and resources everyone needs to live. Look after our citizens' health, education, and safety. Share information with the United Nations about our treatment in the United States, and work together to shape federal and state policies that affect our citizens. All the while, we say, we are still here. Take a moment and let's break this one down too. This time, you'll find 2 important words in the prompt without my help. This time, you'll find 2 important words in the text with purple dots without my help. And you'll also find an important piece of visual information that helps to answer the prompt with the orange dot without my help. Those of you without a computer are once again, right? 1 and 2. What are those 2 most important words? And then what are those other 2 most important words from the text? And then finally, what's that third visual piece of information? All right, please take the time to take care of slide 68 now. Ooh, going for it. And you can see there's this last little picture of Indigenous Peoples Day. Welcome to presentation night. Boom. So I'd like you to finish these 3 sentence starters. Number 1, because I read this book, and by the way, that's what's called a dependent clause, because it starts with the word because, so you need to follow it up with a full thought. I now know, and then finish that sentence. And number 2, because I read this book, comma, I wonder what's something that you wonder about. Number 3, because I read this book, comma, I understand. Oop. Right? And then if you don't have a book, of course, you're just going number 1, number 2, number 3, writing those same sentences there. Okay? Please take the time to finish those 3 sentence starters now. All right. So the prompt that we've been running at the whole time, I'm going to read it again, and we're going to look at a sample exemplar. As we go along, I would like your paragraph to look similar to mine. Mr. Surface, what should I do if I don't have a computer today? I would like you to, pretty please, on your paper, to write down, oh my gosh, to write down on paper, word for word, what's on the paragraph, right? So you just write down, right, Maya's presentation is best. You're just copying down as much as you can before the slide is gone. All right. But for those of you with a computer, it'll be slightly more dynamic. Instead of copying it word for word, you're just following along with me right now. So everybody, please switch to highlighter. And let's go ahead and break this down. So switch to mustard yellow, please. There are many dimensions to the resilience or toughness of Native Americans. I'm going to highlight that phrase, resilience and toughness of Native Americans in this country. Which student, I'm going to click student, does the best job presenting this information? Write an essay examining their presentation. Well, already I see star student. So I'm going to draw a little line from the star student here to this student over there. And then the essay begins by saying Maya's presentation on religious freedom. Ooh, well, they're killing it right from the jump. So I got my star student. I'm going to put a box around it over here. And now I'm going to highlight Maya because she's the star student. And it's her presentation about religious freedom that does the best job presenting information about Indigenous resilience. All right, so they've got a wonderful topic sentence. All right, now I'm going to switch to blue and put a circle around this next picture where you can see all the families coming to the school for the night to go over the Indigenous People Day celebration. The other presentations detail how the United States government, so those other presentations, right, you can see them highlighted there. They're what they're coming in to see, right? How they took Native children. Well, there's that Native children right there in this picture here. I'm going to circle it, and I'm going to highlight took Native children there. Signed and then violated treaties. Well, I can see that in this picture here. There they are signing the treaties, which they eventually violate. And many of the ways Natives pushed back against these injustices. Maya's details. I'm going to switch over to green for this and put a block around the bit that's Maya's presentation, which is about religious freedom and battling for it in the Supreme Court. Native people challenged federal and local laws and policies that had banned us from freely practicing our traditional religions. Native nations sought help from the U.S. Supreme Court, and you can see them arguing in the Supreme Court chambers there. When the court did not support us, Native nations sought to support from Congress, which says we are still here. I'm going to highlight that phrase, we are still here again. Now, it looks like they're going to start explaining this quote with a this noun verb. Repeat after me. This noun verb. This noun verb. Let's look at what this noun verb combinations they did. So, this interrogation, there's my this. There's my noun of government institutions, and there's my verb, shows Maya's confidence with the material. If she had been less specific about the levers of government, then her report would have been less meaningful, right? So if she included less information, it would be less effective. So I'm going to put a little block around this guy. This important accounting of law and Native interest makes Maya's the best presentation showcasing Native resilience. Right, and I'm going to switch on over to green again. Put green down here. There's Maya's best presentation. Goes right along with that resilient native picture down there. All right, please take a moment and make sure your slide looks just like Mr. Surface's, please. Ooh, sounds a little bit like Satie there. All right. This is a breakdown of how you could write this essay, right? If you chose that Maya's was the best, Maya's is the best because 1, 2, and 3, right? And then here we wrote about Maya's being the best, showing resilience, right? And we went over the Supreme Court, right? And then you would probably just repeat that down here. You could flesh out the other 2 body paragraphs later, though it really does only kind of ask for which student does the best job, so you could just go into more on that particular page. Please take a moment to make your slide look like Mr. Surface's. Obviously, you have paper. You can just copy down the pictures that you see, right? And I don't mean like the god of the essay, the thesis, or the president of the paragraph, Barack Obama there. No, I simply mean get the thesis and body paragraph and conclusion. What's in purple, in other words, on paper. Please take the time to do so now. Greed getting into it. So now, if this were a regular school and your teacher were absent, we'd probably be writing an essay soon. And the prompt up there are many dimensions to resilience or toughness of the Native Americans in this country. Which student does the best job presenting this information, right? And there's a little word cloud to go along with it. And then there's the same thing again. Now, all you have to do is copy down what Mr. Surface says here, which is thesis, then 3 body paragraphs, then a conclusion. You don't have to write the actual essay. You just have to copy those words real quick. Please take about 30 seconds to do so. All right. So let's go ahead and get our closing routine knocked out. So we've now finished the book. We've looked at an essay to go with it. What do we do now? Well, what was something I can do as your teacher to support you in this class, right? Maybe there's something about the video. Maybe there was something about the essay. Maybe there's something about annotating, right, with the different highlighters, right? And what's something other students can do to support you in this class, right? Maybe share a computer screen if you're someone who doesn't have a computer today, right? Take a moment, please, and this is on paper, of course, as well, but complete slide 78. All right. Next, don't misunderstand me. One misunderstanding someone might have about me is, right? Maybe your behavior was not right on point. You didn't get every letter of every slide that you ought to have had, right? Or maybe it was about attitude. Or maybe you accidentally had your phone out for some reason. Uh-oh. Right? None of that, please. All right? But one misunderstanding, and then the truth is really, I am laser focused most of the time, or something like that. What's that truth about you? Take a moment, please. Knock out slide 80 for me on the paper or the computer. All right. Where am I? This is a little more involving, but today I accomplished all the book slides, maybe, right? Or today I accomplished number 1 or number 2, right? And you can know this because, well, number 1A, like I did this, that, or the other. Or number 2B, I did this, that, and the other, right? I still need to. What do you still need to complete? Ooh, do you miss some of that Lexia time maybe? And what are your next steps besides a better managed time? Right? We'll certainly see. Take a moment, please, and knock out slide 82. So works for me. This week, we used the following strategies, right? Maybe it was the colored annotations. Maybe it was the exemplar of the essay. Maybe it was the prompt, or maybe it was the draggable dots. All are different strategies we use to organize our thinking around complicated topics, like how information is presented, how it's and what that information communicates, and what worked best for you. You know, blank, blank worked. Oh my gosh, worked best because. Blah, blah, blah. Take a moment, please, and knock out slide 84. Okay. Now, there's probably only about 15 minutes remaining in class. Here's a brand new word search, but similar words from yesterday. Why? Because they're all from this unit about standing up for what is right. And it starts with things like segregation, equality, sacred, marginalized, marginalization, all of those particular words. You'll find them here in this, going forwards, backwards, up and down, all over the place. But you're taking 15 minutes to try to break this down while you round out the day with your substitute. Thank you for doing a great job, and I'll be seeing you soon. Boop.